So it's going to go before council, I guess, budget workshops in August, and then approval in September. So do we get to see this before it goes? What's the process? Do we have?
Thank you. I call to order the Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 Community Service Advisory Board. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Foster,
Here.
Vice Chair Jeffries, Member Land, Member Smith, Member Swingley,
Here.
Alternate Member Needler.
Okay. We need 3 to make any decisions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we are able to have discussions and just for the records, but without any voting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any announcements?
Yes, Chair. One, Chad Merritt, Interim Director, Community Services. Let me adjust. Wanted to give a couple of updates. One being update on the fees and with our current fee chart. Staff has continued to work on this fee chart. We are on a holding pattern at this time. We are working with the county on some agreements, interlocal agreements that would potentially impact the fee chart. So we've kind of held off. I wanted to give the board an update on that. That was a item that was brought up in previous meetings. The interlocal agreement is something that dates back several years ago, and I believe that expires in September. Is that? I'll have to get the exact, but yeah, I believe it expires in September of this year. So, you know, the city manager and some of the elected officials have already met with the county commissioners in a meeting to discuss, and they're going to resume conversations. So I'll provide updates accordingly as I get those. Second thing is the Pure Pelican Pilot Program, which was renewed and carries, actually was renewed for a period of time of a year. That will be, information is still being collected through the police department as well as information through the conservation, and they are going to provide me more information so that I can start putting that into the director's report. I did not have any information from them at this time, and I did reach out to request that information. So we'll start getting those updates now that we're back in session. That's really the 2 items that I had. I just knew those 2 were not in the director's report, and I had questions about those.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next would be public comment, and I don't think we'll pass that on. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, then we go to the approval of our minutes from May 17th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
You cannot take action on those.
Oh, we can't take any
If you want to
action.
discuss among the 2 of you, yeah, you'll just have to defer that to the next
Oh,
agenda.
thank you. Something.
It's all right.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to remind us. Okay, did you have any corrections or adjustments?
No, there are more people here, I'd approve them.
Okay, all right, so we will move on to item number 7, which is the regulation of smoking by counties and municipalities on beaches and parks. And we are recommending action on the ordinance and program changes to the city council. All right.
Yes. So, Chair Foster, I will take that. Again, Chad Merritt, Community Services Interim Director. This is a House bill that was passed in June. It was actually signed by the governor on June 24th. And this House bill is it was regulation of smoking by counties and municipalities, authorizing counties and municipalities to further restrict smoking within the boundaries of public beaches and public parks under certain circumstances, providing an exception, and et cetera. That is how it read within there. There are details which are located if you click on the link in under the timeline. You'll see chapter number 2022-213, it goes into a little bit more detail of what it pertains. I can say that I know that in the past, this board, which you'll see the minutes provided, it dates back all the way to 2001 when there was discussions about the doing a no smoking ban on the pier and the beaches and within parks. It never really got anywhere because we didn't have the authority. There was a preemption that did not allow us to make any of those moves to make it an ordinance or so on. At this time, we do have that right, and there are certain guidelines that are within that. For instance, it states in there that the exception to this new regulation is unfiltered cigars, excuse me. And that's kind of some of the things that I believe the attorneys and so on will be working on with the wording. It's not really our job to come up with the ordinance, but to identify the areas within our department, whether that's the different parks and the beach boundaries and the accesses, and what we would want to see as if we're going to pursue restrictions, then where are those areas going to be? And that's kind of our conversation, and that's what our conversation is going to be today. If we had the rest of our board, this is scheduled to go to the City Council August 17th. That is going to be a conversation with them as well, and I can let our city attorney kind of.
So this piece of legislation is a major victory for cities and counties, because in the past, the state had the ability to regulate, but now we, pursuant to our home rule of powers, we can adopt reasonable regulations. And as Chad pointed out, the location of where these, which parks, which beach areas, that will become where the focus will be, because now we have the authority. So it sounds like August the 17th, so you won't have the opportunity to provide a recommendation because you don't have a full board today and you can't really take action, but at least you're knowledgeable of it. And as Chad pointed out, there are prior minutes that indicate perhaps what your concern is. Chad, I don't know, on the 17th, will council be looking at an ordinance for first reading or just a discussion? Do you know?
To my knowledge, this is going to be more of a organic discussion to see what direction the city wants to take. I'm sure that they'll kind of give some of the staff direction and some guidelines on what they would like to see put together, which probably include city attorney's office as well. But the locations, I think, is the main thing. We're trying to take it one step at a time. Obviously, if this was adopted, it means a pretty drastic change, because we would have to change all of the signage at each beach access, each park. And obviously, when it comes to ordinance changes, it requires a little bit more than just a 1, 2, 3 vote and you're done.
Right. It does require 2 readings before City Council with a final adoption based on an advertisement in the newspaper. Yeah. By City Council. By City Council, yeah. So.
All right, so then our job is to sort of talk about, if we're going to do this, where we would do it.
Yeah,
What locations.
And I'll talk about what the original recommendation, obviously we can't vote on that, but some of the areas that we would look at if we wanted to enforce this restriction and pursue it, we would look at our public parks, which would include Baker Park, Cambier Park, Flashman Park, Preserve, et cetera. So any of those public parks, Seagate.
Yeah.
So any of those public parks, as well as the pier, the city dock, and our public beach accesses, which are within the corporate limits of Naples. So we look at the beach strand that falls within our corporate limits. So those are the areas that that we would want to look at. I don't really have any additional because when it does say parks, and we actually have to get clarification on whether the pier and the city dock is going to be included in parks. It is a facility within the Parks and Recreation, so that would be one of those things that would have to be clarified through the city attorney as well as some other research.
So we're somewhat limited on how far we can go with trying to make these decisions today. But
Correct. And it's just, we always want to have a conversation when this comes versus jump on the bandwagon of whatever direction we want to go. These conversations are important because this is a pretty drastic change. It is going to cost the city some funds as far as replacing signage and so on. So we want to make sure that we do what's best for our community, and we want to get the guidance from City Council as well, as far as our department's concerned. And on the 17th, I think it's going to be a really good conversation with City Council, and we'll look for direction from them at that time.
are they determined to do this early? Because as I mentioned to you, I think it's important that we have a public hearing with us, like we have done in the past, when we invite the public to come in, as we have done with dogs in the park and, boats on the beach and things like that. I would like to suggest that we wait with them so that we are able to reach out to the public.
Yeah, I can't really speak on what their conversation and decisions will be. I can at least share that information within the memo. Obviously, we don't have a decision, so I can't really share that there was a recommendation, but I can at least share a conversation, correct? Mm-hmm. So I'll share in the memo that there was a conversation that was had, and that was a question that was brought up within the CSAB.
Okay, thank you.
Well, so no need to share any of our opinions at this point? I mean, I know we can't vote
No,
or
you
take
can-
action, but should we have it for public record, like what our opinions are?
Yeah, you can share. This is a discussion. We can have I'd say as long as discussion as we want, but we can have a discussion. You just can't take any action. You can't say, yeah, I'd like to see us do it for public parks, and then she makes a motion that we do no smoking in public parks. I mean, that's more of a motion. So we can have the discussion all you want right now.
Would you prefer for the two of us to state our opinions, or would you rather
Absolutely.
wait for the full board to be here?
Absolutely. It's going to council on August 17th, so I don't know what kind of discussion we'll have again. They could give different direction, so.
Well, that puts us under a lot of pressure.
Well, do you want me to start?
Go for
All
it.
right, well, in preparation for possibly taking action, I did some research and looked some things up. And of course, striving to be a blue zone community, I think that's the top right there, that we want to, maintain healthy standards. So right now, I'm discussing why I believe we should ban smoking on our public beaches and our public parks. Smell, safety to humans and the environment, and it's trash. A few things I looked up. I looked up an article. It's called Breathing Space, a study by Inogen. It talked about secondhand smoke, and these are just facts that I'm stating. 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette, 70 can cause cancer, and there's hundreds that can be toxic. Not to keep smokers from smoking. I'm not saying, everybody stop smoking, that's a smoker, but it's going to be to protect others that are in their smoke line or whatever. Another article that I looked up, it was called The Battle of the Butts by Christy Hughes, 2020. There's 4.5 trillion cigarette butts that are tossed each year. The cellulose acetate, the type of plastic that's in the butt, takes 10 years for it to decompose. Another article I read, Ocean Conservancy of International Cleanup. In the last 30 years, there were 60 million butts were collected from our oceans. And then it said that cigarettes make up more than 1/3 of the trash collected, about 38%. And that was from the Truth Initiative. And so these were just some background things. How miserable is it to be sitting on our beautiful beaches in a chair watching kids, grandkids play, and all of a sudden a big puff of smoke comes your way, and you're trying to be environmentally friendly and have a good time. I am a big advocate that I think we should not allow it at all. Okay. Now, the next question what are the recommendations on where we place these stipulations? My opinion was going to be any named public park or named public beach. And of course, you just mentioned the pier and the city dock. We don't know where they fall into the categories. And the beach access areas. But any place where the children and people are coming and going from the beach. I mean, we can't smoke in schools, we don't smoke in restaurants, we don't smoke in public places. This is another public place, and again, you can tell I'm quite passionate about this. I don't believe we should have cigarette smoke on the beach or breathe the smoke in. Ta-da! That's what I've got to say about that.
I did not do all of the research you did. I was looking at it from another standpoint, but I am totally in favor with everything Kathy has said. I am pro-environmental. I don't like to see butts on the beach, and I would agree it should be every public park, every named beach. And however, my side, I also did some research on how that would affect people who think, this is my private right to smoke. So this is something I think we're going to have to talk about. I did see that only an estimated 15.5% of the adults in Florida are tobacco smokers. So overall, that's a very small amount of people who come to our beach that smoke. So do they have the right to dominate what is totally a health problem and an environmental problem? But at the same time, I am concerned about taking their right to smoke away. And I'm wondering, only because it's outdoors, should we have a smoking area designated for, say, large beaches, let's say Loudermilk? Do I like the idea? No, but do I think it's fair? It could be considered fair for the 86.4 people who are not smoking. So, you know, I'm sort of caught in a web here, and even though if it went past, like Kathy suggested, I would cheer. But I think there's going to be concern, as we expect it to be. And so I'm thinking, we have designated smoking areas in certain parks?
Absolutely. So, again, this information and these discussions will try to pass those on as far as city council and voicing some of the concerns and that both of you have. And I think it is definitely something we want to notate. If you look in the memo that on November 16, 2016, that the mayor and city council focused on basically the fact that local municipalities could restrict smoking in indoor facilities, but not in outdoor facilities, which included parks, piers, playgrounds, ball fields, etc. The idea to discourage smoking in the parks was placing signs saying "healthy lungs that work." So that was the original initiative, and some of those initiatives, I believe, were put in place, but I don't know that was really pursued in the extreme to what City Council had provided direction in 2016. So I do think that City Council, this is a very important matter for City Council. I believe they're very anxious to get it in front of them. I think we're going to really receive a lot of good information from them and a lot of good feedback. So I encourage all of you to stay tuned and look at that meeting and really listen to what some of the direction is. Because as I said, you could see that potentially come back to this board. You may see that public input, which it does require anyways, but after a first and second reading. So we'll, I think that's going to give us and put us where we need to be and let us know the direction that we're going. So,
okay, I agree. Thank you. I think we're about as far as we can go on this.
That's it, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
any additions from city attorney, or we're good?
No, we're fine. We've looked at, our city manager provided a copy of an ordinance that's just already in play in another municipality. And it's pretty simple as far as the fact that the city can now regulate smoking in public parks. But, the devil's always in the details.
Mm-hmm.
And again, having adequate signage so people know that it's prohibited, and to which parks, the pier and the dock. Thank you for alerting me to that issue, so we can do some research before city council addresses it.
You mean including like the pier, the dock?
Yeah, to see whether that falls what the
Right.
legislature was thinking when it defined parks.
Well, we consider them a park, do we not?
It's a facility, so, you know, I start to question whether or not it, just like we don't allow it in our community centers and so on, is this a facility, even though it's outdoor? If you've got covered areas, are we able to do anything with the shelter areas, and since they're enclosed? So that I believe, I don't like to assume anything, especially when you have attorneys. So we'll let them
Welcome.
we'll let them determine what the real direction is, and then we'll pursue however we need.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me take you back. All right, so, all right. Shall we go on with the director's report then?
Yes. So
May I
you'll
make, excuse me, though.
Yep.
I'm going to back up and make one correction on your the introduction that you have for the for the smoking. When you said to go to look at 2022-213 on that first page, I tried to get on it, and I could not get on it. So I don't know whether it was that I had a glitch, but I went into the website, was right there. So I don't know whether that needs correcting.
Yeah, and I'll try to see. I was trying to save us from having to include it. If I can, I may try to submit that as a full document. And
Well,
add
it's
it to
hard
the
to
record.
find when you get online to find it. I mean, it basically gives you one sentence.
Does it take you to? Yeah. So when it takes you to that one sentence, if you look underneath, it lets you go to additional areas within that.
This is all, I
House
can
bill.
hand this to you if it would help.
Okay, yeah, I can get with you, and
Yeah.
if I see that it's just not working, then I'll provide the city clerk an additional attachment to put in for the record in this place,
Okay,
and that way everybody will be able to
All right.
access it.
thank you. Okay. All right, let's go to the director's report.
Yep. So, obviously, I let everyone kind of read through that, and if you had any questions, but I will say that this is kind of a new outline that I put together. I felt like the past one was a little complicated to read, so I wanted to have each section. So I actually have each one of the superintendents as well as the supervisors in their certain sections, which includes the tennis center as well as the city dock. We didn't have a section for that previous, so I wanted to make sure every section was addressed. Community services is a large department, so when I see a director's report and it just talks about the very detailed stuff about your recreation programs, not so much about what's going on in parks and parkways and facility maintenance, I wanted to make sure that you had that information as well. So you'll see this start getting a little bit more detailed. This was kind of our first shot with staff trying to put this together and navigate through, and me trying to make sure it's consistent, because I tend to be OCD, so I didn't want it to look different. So everything will have, everybody likes pictures, so instead of show you a bunch of words, I want you to see pictures of kids playing tennis, of kids participating in summer camp, of adults, having a blast on the beach or whatever it may be. So I try to incorporate some of those so that everybody sees a visual, because if you don't understand what our department or where we actually reach, it's pretty extensive. Between the beach, all of the right-of-ways, if anybody's been down Goodlett Frank Road, you've noticed the work that's being done right at Golden Gate, which I hope should be coming to an end within the next couple of weeks. But those things are projects that our staff are working on and that we've put together. When you look at the city dock is also part of our department. So it's pretty. I think it's cool how far we go. So I think it needed to be reflected in this director's report, so that's what you have.
Well, I thought it was excellent and very easy to read and enjoyable. I just pulled up this one page, which shows literally 7 days. That's the kind of, this is typical of the city and what we put on here.
This is the slow period. So this is actually, when you
Yeah.
look at December, January, and February, and even March, you get far more special events. So this is just a list of the special events. And these are a lot of small events that are private that still have to go through us. You might have a neighborhood party, and that requires permits and special event permits through us. So this is just kind of a scope. So this is what's provided to us, and when I say us, everyone, police department, fire department, and so on. Each week, we get a list of what special events are happening, so everybody's aware of what's going on in the city. So I felt like it would be good to provide that same list to the board so that you see the things that are going on. I would like to eventually incorporate an upcoming event table in here as well, but I didn't have a whole lot of time to put it together with everything else that was going on. So
And you are just setting up a special events committee.
that's
Of what,
correct.
there's 6 of you, I think, something like that.
It's going to be various departments. So
Yes.
the special event committee is
Yes.
it's basically each department right now, as it stands, they evaluate special events as they come in each application, and they share information back with us via email. That's all good, but the problem is there is a lack of communication between the departments at that point, because everybody's looking at emails and we get bombarded with it instead of having face-to-face conversations of, hey, here's this event, here's really what's happening, this is some of the areas, this is how it's going to affect your department. We can have those conversations. We can also have the conversations of, we just had an event 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or however long ago, and we want to discuss some of the things that really went well in that event that we could try to expand and utilize in other events. We could also talk about some of the things that didn't go so well, and how we can make some changes so that that doesn't occur. And I think that's really the main focus on it. Everything, there's certain special events that have to go to City Council for approval, and those requirements are identified within the ordinance. So we'll still be abiding by the same thing. Nothing really changes. We're just trying to beef up our process, because when City Council gets this information, they're relying on us to gather the details. And when we give them a document, and I'm not going to speak on the past, but to me, if I provide them a document and I don't provide them enough information to make their decision, and that warrants them to have an hour and a half conversation on one event, then I haven't done what I should do. So I want to make sure that we're providing that information to them, and I think this committee is going to help us ensure that that happens moving forward.
So, in other words, I know a lot of these are repeats. Does every single event go before the city council?
Not every event. So the ones that require city council approval are amplified music, street closings, any event that's over 1,500 people, and fireworks. Those are the criteria that requires that. Now, you look back, and just amplified music almost incorporates, I'd say, 75% of your events, because nobody wants to do a special event without having some sort of music or band or something that's amplified. So that does incorporate most of your events. Street closings, the same thing. And then when you talk about 1,500 people, a successful event around here is going to draw well over that. So it does incorporate most of those items, but we do have some that we might have a basketball tournament outdoors over at River Park, and it doesn't require street closing, it doesn't require amplified music, it doesn't require fireworks, and there's not going to be over 1,500 people and no off-site parking. So it wouldn't require city council approval, but those are the things that we want to discuss, and we go through and make sure that everybody is on the same page. Because when you talk about resources that are used, the police department really gets hit probably the hardest in these special events. When you look at, for example, July 4th, there was a 5K race, there was a parade, and then there was fireworks. There was police officers that when I went to the parade that I saw, and then when I went to the fireworks, I saw all the way to the end, even as I was walking out. Some of those had been there through the 5K race, through the parade, as well as the fireworks. So, I mean, that's a long day.
Yeah.
And those are things that we have to consider when we start looking at these special events. It's all fun. Everybody loves to have all the special events you can, but when you've got 3 or 4 special events on one weekend, you got to remember that these police officers are working around the clock as it is, and a lot of them, that means that they've got to be called in to help supplement the ones that are on duty already. So,
Do you recall, I think it was when Dana Souza was here, that we talked about trying to move more events to the county? Remember that?
I remember a little bit of discussion about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because just what you're telling me is overwhelming, and most county events want to be taking place here in the city, the runs, for example.
yeah.
So I didn't know whether you're working with the county to try to make some of these move out to the county.
Yeah, I'll have to have a conversation. That they're in the process of, they've got, their director has left as well. I think he retired. So they don't have a director at this time, and in the process of filling that. But that conversation, I'm sure they have a ton of events themselves. I think what we have to do first is identify what we can handle, and outline, in one way that I've done that previous is to take a calendar and sit down with the other departments, and this is another task that will probably happen within this committee, and determine what is a adequate amount of special events that we can handle. If we had, and this is not final, but let's say we looked at a month, we looked at the month of July, what would be an amount of special events that we could handle on July? And if we went through and we said, you know what, we can handle 2 events per weekend, or we can handle 1 event per weekend, or we can only handle 2 events per week. Those are the things that we have to determine. But right now, if somebody applies for a special event, they go through the same process. They apply for it. It then gets submitted out to the departments. They look at it. It's not really notated whether or not, yes, it works for our department. It's more of, hey, this event, there's no event on this date, so we're putting it on here. And as long as you can make it work, make it work. Well, now we have to change that mindset. We've got to really look at what we can afford, because it hits the budget. And when you start looking at overtime and you start looking at a lot of the hours and burned out employees, and that's the last thing we want. So,
Right.
We'll continue to try to work with the county moving forward, but I'm pretty certain that their events are probably, they're just as stacked as we are, because they actually have a lot larger event space than what we have.
That's true.
So, but it's kind of up to them. If we deny them and we say, hey, you know what, we can't handle any more special events, then that organizer has to make the decision on whether or not they want to pursue the county. Because I hate to kind of push it over, and then the new director comes and says, what are you doing? Why are you sending me all these events? So, we want to be very respectful of them as well, because they have the same resources they have to use.
Yeah, okay. But just a thought, because I know it just seemed overwhelming when I looked at that list. Okay, all right. Let me go back to where I am. All right. Any members' comment? Ms. Okay. Shall we adjourn? Shall we have a motion to adjourn?
We can.
we cannot adjourn ourselves?
Stay here forever and
Yeah, you
You can make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion. I will make the motion to adjourn.
And I second. All in favor? Aye.
Call the meeting to order. Welcome to today's meeting. If you wish to address the board regarding any item listed on this agenda, please complete a registration form at the rear of the room and place it in the speaker's request box located on the dais prior to consideration of that item. We ask the speakers limit their comments to 7 minutes and that any large group name a spokesman whenever possible. Thank you for your interest in city government, and those watching us this morning on television, welcome and thank you for spending your time with us. I call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Ruby,
Present.
Vice Chair Bullock,
Here.
Member Dripsa,
Here.
Member Frederickson,
Present.
Member Orion,
Present.
Alternate Member Fawcett,
Present.
We have a quorum, it appears. Okay, next item on the agenda is changes to the agenda. And we've had one request due to just scheduling, and the petitioner who is making the presentation has a tight airline flight this afternoon, and we've requested that we move 6H further up in the agenda. And talking with Leslie, we're suggesting that we kind of move that between A and B. Does anyone have any objections to making that move in consideration of the petitioner? If not, we will move 6H to the second on the agenda. Are there any other agenda changes to the agenda?
None from staff.
Nothing from staff? Anything from the board? If not, the agenda stands as amended. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. And I realize I wasn't here last month, but we do not have last month's minutes. I gather they're a little behind in the clerk's office keeping up with all the hearings that have been going on in the past couple of months.
Yes.
But we do have the minutes from our April 27th and April 29th workshop, our 27th board meeting and a 29th workshop. Does anyone have any comments or amendments to those minutes?
Motion to approve?
Let's do them one at a time. 4A, is that motion for 4A?
Motion for 4A?
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For 4B, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve 4B?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any public comment, not to any of the cases that we're going to hear today, but just in general about the DRB or design issues within the city? If not, we'll move on. Before we start public hearings, I'd like to, privilege of the chair to make an announcement. I want to recognize the passing of a legend in our architectural world in Naples this month, Andrea